We can do it
All right, we're ready, Mayor.
Good evening. I'm calling to order the regular meeting of the Ross Town Council, Thursday, September 9. Can we have the roll call, please, Linda?
Yes, Councilmember Cool
Here.
and Councilmember McMillan
here.
and Mayor Robbins.
Here.
And let the record show that Council members Breckus and Kircher are absent.
Thank you. Has the agenda been posted?
Yes, it has.
And then I'd like to announce from our closed session meeting of September 8, there were no reportable actions to report from the closed session. Item number 4, minutes. There was an edit to the minutes by Gerald Page. With that edit, is there a motion to approve the minutes or are there other edits to be made? Councilmember McMillan.
Move to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
All right, let's take the vote. Councilmember Cool, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Councilmember McMillan,
Aye.
Mayor Robbins.
Aye.
And the motion passes as amended.
Thank you. Item 5, the demands. Have they been met? Have the demands been met?
Yes, they have.
Thank you. Item 6, this is the open time for public expression, limited to 3 minutes per speaker on items that are not on the agenda. Council members can't engage in a discussion about these items. Are there any members of the public who have raised their hands to offer comments, Linda?
Yes, and I will bring in Noah Berry.
Okay.
Go ahead, Noah.
Noah's muted, so he'll need to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I live at 51 Sir Francis Drake, and I'm in the middle of a FEMA hazard mitigation grant. And I've spent about $31,000 in permits and fees. I haven't pulled my permit yet, but my project is just to raise my house out of the floodplain. This is part of a FEMA grant. And I'm asking, I emailed the council earlier today. I don't know if you got my email, but I'm pleading with the council to somehow reduce my fees. We talked about this when my plan was approved about potentially getting reduced fees, but I gave the council, the mayor and the council members the breakdown of my costs, and my grant is in jeopardy because Cal OES and FEMA are deeming the project potentially the cost overruns are making it unfeasible. So in my opinion, like $31,000 in fees and permits for a project where the contractor who's going to raise the house is only going to charge me $20,000. I'm not putting in a pool. I'm not doing an ADU. I'm just trying to mitigate a flooding situation that recurs, not this year because of the drought, but about every 4 or 5 years I flood. And so I'm asking the council if they can look at that with the building department and see if I can get some kind of relief on this so I can move forward with my project.
Thank you very much. Are there other comments or other members of the public who have a comment, Linda?
No, Mayor, there isn't.
Then the next item, number 8, is council committee and liaison reports, starting with the town manager, Joe Chin. Wait, mayor's report.
Yeah, you
All
skipped.
right. My report comes first. All right, here we are. So it was the perfect end of summer celebration. Ross residents enjoyed 2 nights of outdoor dining and live music on the Common on August 27 and 28th. Over 300 people showed up each night. There was something for everyone. Music on the Ross School stage, a specialty food truck each night, Moroccan on Friday, Al Pastor tacos on Saturday, dinners from cherished local restaurants, Marché aux Fleurs, Tony Tudo Pizza, and Trattoria Fresca on the sidewalks, face painting, a giant bubble station on the grass for children, and tables under festive lights on Redwood Drive. Thank you, Ross Auxiliary and Ross Property Owners Association Board, whose members, especially Elena Batalla, Adrian Leggett, and Matt Salter, conceived of and planned the event. Funding was provided by the town of Ross, the Auxiliary, and RPOA. Town employees staffed the event, including Anthony Alcazar from Public Works Department, Gretchen Kastitz from Ross Recreation, and Police Chief Pata and his officers. The weekend was a huge success, and there are already requests for another evening of live music and outdoor dining. This newest town-wide event will soon be followed by our annual town dinner on Friday, October 1 from 5:30 to 9. All are welcome to spend the evening enjoying potluck picnic dinners and music provided by the Bob Scott All-Star Band. As in previous years, tables will be set up on the common in the Grove area. Because of COVID, tables will be carefully separated for safety. Emails will be sent later this month with more details about the dinner. RSVPs are requested to help the town know how many tables to set up. The town dinner is another wonderful opportunity to enjoy an evening outside with family, friends, and neighbors. Events like these remind us that Ross is a very special place. Opportunities to get together with friends and neighbors are an important part of the fabric of our community. And we're so fortunate to have the beautiful Ross Common in the center of town. It's the perfect location for gathering together. So now we move on to council committee and liaison reports, starting with Town Manager Joe Chin.
Thank you, Mayor and council members.
Excuse me, Mayor, I think you skipped council committees.
Oh, I'm council committee and liaison reports. I will get to you, Joe. Are there any council committee and liaison reports? Councilmember McMillan.
Yeah, I just want to remind people that we have a red flag warning today, and it's going into tomorrow, potentially with dry lightning. And everyone should have received the notification that we are under a red flag warning, because I'm sure all residents have signed up for Alert Marin via the Marin County Sheriff. I also wanted to encourage residents to take a look at an excellent article that discusses the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority formation and its initial work. And that article can be found at westerncity.com/article/how Marin County changing wildfire prevention paradigm. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other council committee or liaison reports? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 9. Joe Chin.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Building on what the mayor said, the Music and Dining event on August 27th and 28th was spectacular. A big thank you to all the people involved that made it happen. And next up is the Ross Town Dinner on Friday, October 1st. Share dinner stories and socialize with family and neighbors under the lights on the commons. I have several project updates. The town has made a big effort in the last 5 years of accelerating the town roadway improvements. And currently we have the highest roadway PCI, pavement condition index, of any jurisdiction in Marin County. In non-engineering terms, we have the roads in the best condition in the county. And starting next Monday, we will begin the pavement rehabilitation program for the downtown. We'll be starting rehabilitating the pavement on the Ross Common roadway between Lagunitas Road and Tony Tuto's, Redwood Drive along the park, and the Ross Post Office parking lot. We've been communicating and working with the school and businesses in the area to best coordinate the improvements with their operations. We sent out a townwide email on it earlier today. We'll continue to provide updates to the public as the project progresses, and to let people know when roadways and the post office parking will be affected by the construction. In addition, we are providing a slurry seal on El Camino Bueno, which is scheduled for early October. The current phase of the Laurel Grove Safe Pathway project is progressing through preliminary design and environmental review. Preliminary alignments have been prepared, and Rich Our Public Works Director will be holding a public outreach field walk and workshop with residents and the consultant on Saturday, September 18th at 9 a.m. on Laurel Grove to get an idea of the residents' preferred alignment for the pathway. Staff will present the alignment alternatives and the results of the workshop to council at the October or November council meeting to select the final alignment and proceed to final engineering. And whereas the council agenda tonight is very light, given we have only 3 council members at this meeting, the October meeting will be very busy. Among other topics expected for that meeting are the Ross Common Park Landscaping Rehabilitation Plan, sign regulations, Winship Bridge update, EV charging stations in the downtown area, a couple of planning projects, and either at the October or November meetings, we expect the Corte Madera Creek flood control project design review, as well as what I mentioned before, the Laurel Grove Safe Pathways project selection. And that completes my report.
Thank you very much. Item 9B is the Ross Property Owners Association update. Jackie Osterman wasn't able to attend, but she sent me the update, which I will read. The RPOA highlight from August is obviously the Live on the Common event that was spearheaded by Ross Auxiliary members Adrian Leggett, Elena Batalla, and Matt Salter, who also serves as RPOA's treasurer. These 3, along with amazing support from Police Chief Pata and his officers, Gretchen Kastitz of Ross Rec, and especially Joe Chin and Anthony Alcazar from the town, the latter who worked over 10 hours each day, organized an incredible community event enjoyed by all. The positive feedback has been incredible, and RPOA and Ross Auxiliary hope to bring more such events to the town. We are currently planning for a Winterfest. In addition to this event, RPOA has been focused on various improvement and beautification projects throughout the town. The water fountain at Natalie Coffin Green Park is now fully functional and flowing. The annual flower baskets are hanging around our downtown and will soon be paired with the fall banners. We are actively pursuing repainting of the common area of the post office, after which we will hang more photo canvases featuring our special town. And we will be constructing wood structures to enclose the bathroom portables near the Commons and Natalie Coffin Green Park. Finally, RPOA is working with the Ross Age-Friendly Task Force and constantly reaching out to the community to encourage membership and participation in RPOA. We want to thank the town council and of course, Joe Chin and Anthony Alcazar for their support in helping us keep Ross special. Item number 10 is the consent agenda. There's one item on the consent agenda, the financial summary report. Are there any council members who want to take this item off the consent agenda? Are there any members of the public who would like to take this item off to discuss it?
There are no raised hands, Mayor.
Then is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you.
All right, let's take the vote. How do you vote, Councilmember Cool
Aye.
and Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Mayor Robbins,
Aye.
and the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Item number 11, Town Council consideration of introduction of ordinance number 709, an ordinance of the Town of Ross amending Ross Municipal Code, Chapter 15.36, flood damage prevention to amend the definition of floodway and the mechanical equipment elevation requirements above the FEMA 100-year base flood elevation. And this will be presented by our Public Works Director, Rich Simonich.
Thank you, Mayor Robbins and members of the Ross Town Council, Rich Simonich, Public Works Director. So tonight we're holding a public hearing to consider introduction of the first reading of ordinance 709 to amend Ross Municipal Code, Chapter 15.36 to adopt by reference to the Town of Ross flood damage prevention ordinance. So just to start, a couple clarifications just to begin with. So whenever we use the term freeboard, that basically means the elevation above the base flood elevation that FEMA established. So a 1 foot freeboard is sort of a 1 foot safety cushion that we are establishing for finished floors, and with this ordinance, the location of HVAC and electrical to 1 foot above the base flood elevation. So back in just last month, August 12th, we were notified by FEMA's insurance consultants that we maintained our Class 8 CRS rating. The best rating is a 1, which is extremely hard to get at, especially with a small town like Ross. But an 8 is pretty good for a town our size. What that means is people who have flood insurance can see a 10% reduction in their premiums if the flood insurance is through a FEMA approved flood insurance adjuster. So moving on to the changes to the ordinance. Mainly the definitions that we're looking at are for the definition of the base flood elevation. There were a couple of key terms missing in the definition of the base flood elevation, mainly that the 100-year storm is actually the key metric for the base flood elevation, and defined as the 1% chance of a storm event happening in any given year. So that's really just a clarification, something we missed in the past. I probably should have caught that before, but we are catching it now. The next change in definitions or modification is the definition of a floodway. So the ordinance currently had an older definition of what a floodway is defined as the portion of the channel or other water course in the adjacent land areas which must be reserved in order to discharge the base flood without cumulatively increasing the water surface elevation by more than 1 foot. So that was what it said before. So we're changing that to a designated height because that gives us a little bit more flexibility in the future. So agencies have the opportunity to have the base flood elevation represent something less than a 1 foot rise. And it's a little bit difficult to explain, but let's say we passed an ordinance that we want our floodplain to be only 1/2 a foot rise. So what we would do a hydraulic modeling and reestablish the limits of the regulatory floodway. And if we went down to 1/2 a foot or something lower than 1 foot, then that would widen the regulatory floodway and cause more structures to be impacted by the requirements of the regulatory floodway. So most agencies throughout the United States stay with this 1 foot evaluation of the floodway. So it's really just a mathematical calculation that FEMA uses to establish the limits of the regulatory floodway on their NFIP maps. What it does not change is that portion in our ordinance that says you cannot do any development within the regulatory floodway that would cause any change, 0.0 change to the water surface elevation of the floodway. That is not impacted. It's only the definition from FEMA of how they establish the regulatory floodway. So I know that all sounds confusing, and I'm happy to meet with the residents of Ross to discuss that further and give them a little bit more explanation on that. The final amendment or change to the ordinance deals with the elevation of your HVAC, your air conditioning, heating, and ventilation, and any electrical components. Currently, our ordinance was silent on the requirement to raise those above the base flood elevation. We have the 1 foot elevation raising of finished floor requirements above the base flood elevation, and this is for new construction or substantial remodels only. So we're adding as a requirement of our keeping our CRS Class 8 class, we're adding this 1 foot elevation for HVAC and electrical component. So that's a requirement that came around in January of this year. And so I waited until we got the determination that we're still the class 8 from the FEMA ISO consultants. And that was August 12th. So that gave me just enough time to pull this ordinance together so we can get this amendment so we can keep our class 8. And again, these requirements are only triggered by new construction, tear down, rebuilds, and if interior remodels that the construction exceeds 50% of the market value of the home. So all of these changes are either innocuous or they benefit the residents by adding resiliency to new construction and reducing the costs of claims, flood claims in the future. So that concludes my report for tonight, and I'm available for any questions regarding the amendment of this ordinance. Thank you.
Are there any questions from council members for Rich? Councilmember McMillan.
We did receive 2 comments from residents, from Mr. Crane and Mr. Ryan. And I'm wondering, Rich, if you can briefly address their concerns and how this new language affects their concerns.
Yeah, so the main concern, I think, was why we're all of a sudden presenting this ordinance amendment, and it's simply triggered by the August 12th notification that we have maintained our class 8 CRS rating. Their questions also pertain to, well, how does that affect their current situation with the San Anselmo flood risk reduction project, how that project is actually raising the water surface elevation, the 100-year water surface elevation along Corte Madera Creek, along the rear frontage of some of these properties. So I don't know exactly how it's going to manifest with the mitigation that the county is going to come up with, whether it's going to be triggered or not. If the mitigation is triggered, the town's position will be that now that we have this 1-foot elevation increase, this freeboard with HVAC and electrical, as well as finished floor, that any mitigation will need to adhere to the town's flood protection ordinance. So if the HVAC and electrical is impacted by new flooding, and again, the details have yet to be worked out on it, the town has this ordinance that can require, prior to approval of the building permit, that their electrical and HVAC does in fact get raised out of 1 foot above the floodplain. So we have this ordinance now in place to have that argument with the county when they come back and with their whatever form of mitigation they're going to do. So, and I'm going to be continue to work with the residents to as they go through this process with the San Anselmo flood risk reduction project impacts, to make sure that the building permits that'll be required when they do whatever the mitigation, whatever form that may be, adheres to this new code.
Are there other questions from council members? Then let's see, are there any questions or comments? Or are there any comments from members of the public? Linda?
There are no hands raised at the moment. Is anyone out there that wants to speak?
Attendees.
No, Mayor.
Fine.
Oh, here we go. Just as I said no.
Yes.
Okay, Charlie Goodman. Oh, where are you? For some reason, he is not. There you go. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, great. Okay. As you know, I live at the end of Sylvan Lane. My utilities are underneath the house, and all the electrical comes from underneath. The heating ducts are all underneath, and the furnaces are underneath. With this new plan that's coming through San Anselmo, it is going to cause more flooding in Ross, and my house is going to. I know that the basement area, the crawl space, is going to flood, and it is going to be, a very expensive thing to do. And there is really no way that I can move my furnace and electrical out of the crawl space. It would be hugely expensive. So I'm not in favor of this, of this ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other members of the public with comments, Linda?
Yes, Mayor, I'm bringing in Noah Barry.
Okay.
For some reason. Go ahead, Noah.
No, you're muted. You'll need to unmute.
Thank you, Richard. My project relates directly to this ordinance, and what I'm trying to do is exactly what your new ordinance proposes. And so it would increase the cost exponentially for any future renovations to any of the homeowners anywhere near the creek. And I'm kind of on the fence on that, but I just want to ask the council members if they received my email from earlier today.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Please consider it.
Thank you. Linda, do we have one other speaker?
Yes, John Crane.
Okay.
Good evening. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Rich, I really appreciate your work on this. It means a lot to us since I'm one of the impacted homeowners. Curious as to how many people will be impacted by this ordinance. And along with that, I'd love to have you talk a little bit more about the designated height, because the definition of the regulatory floodway seems to be pretty critical for a home such as mine. And third question is, I'd like to understand why some of the homes on Shady Lane, starting with San Anselmo Church, are not being surveyed by the SAFRA project with regard to the fact that they're actually in a regulatory floodway, if that's correct, and they're being impacted by this project. And as far as I know, they've been completely left out of any mitigation, any discussion of that. So I want everybody on the council to be aware that there may be more homes being impacted than has been revealed by the county thus far. And I hope I'm not mistaken. I know you're good with Marin maps, Rich, so I look to you for some guidance. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I may, I can respond to John's questions.
Okay.
Working backwards, so the Shady Lane is not within the Shady Lane properties are not within the regulatory floodway that would be impacted by the SAFER project. Speaking to the hydraulic modeling that was done by the county, there's no impact from the SAFER project on the 100-year storm. Once you have gone past the Sir Francis Drake Bridge in Ross, that's what the hydraulic modeling says. So that's what, and that FEMA will have to confirm that too when they review hydraulic modeling for the Clomer. as far as how many residences would be impacted by this new ordinance. So again, the new ordinance only comes into effect if your house is in the zone AE floodplain. There's no structures that are actually in the floodway, in the high velocity portion of the creek, but there's several houses that are in zone A floodplain. So if they did a substantial remodel, or if they did a tear down rebuild, like quite a few houses, the one at the near the end of Sylvan Lane was a tear down rebuild. And they had to, of course, get their finished floor 1 foot above the base flood elevation. And had this ordinance been in effect, we would have required that they have all their electrical and HVAC 1 foot above the 100-year base flood elevation. I believe they did that anyway. They put it all up in the roof. So as long as no one is doing tear down rebuilds or substantial remodels while they're in the floodplain, and that's where the big ticket insurance claims comes from, and that's why FEMA is regulating these requirements to be raised in this 1 foot buffer above the 100-year floodplain. And speaking to Noah's question, the same thing. So Noah, your permits were approved prior to this ordinance, so this wouldn't apply to your project. It's not going to apply to any projects that have their building permit applications already in with the town. And John, I think you had one more question on that, or hopefully I've answered that. But if you could let John in, Linda.
Okay, normally you should only speak once, but I'll go ahead.
Yeah, well, I asked him the question.
Okay, hang on.
John, you're muted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so the other question I had was speaking about the designated height and what that means in relation to 1 foot. And as clarification, are you saying the homes on Shady Lane are not in a regulatory floodway, or they're not in a regulatory floodway because the project cuts off at Sir Francis Drake, which I think is somewhat debatable because San Anselmo Church and a few properties, to me, are upstream of Winship Bridge. So I think they've been removed from the project consideration, which I'm not sure if that's correct, because they're still going to be impacted. As I count it, there's 14 homes on Shady Lane that are in the regulatory floodway. So I just want to make sure we're counting everybody before we move ahead with these projects. Thank you. So I'd love to hear more about designated height and how that impacts things. Thank you.
Okay, so this designated 1 foot definition within the regulatory floodway, that's really sort of a mathematical variable added to the hydraulic modeling that FEMA does. What they do is they assume that everything outside of the regulatory floodway is filled up and encroached up against the regulatory floodway. And that causes the 1 foot rise. And so they established that as the base flood elevation. Again, it'd be hard to explain even with a diagram, but it's just the standard used when they define the limits of a regulatory floodway. So it really has no impact on anything but where that regulatory floodway is. With regards to your question on Shady Lane, so they are in a zone, several houses are in the zone AE 100-year base flood elevation or special flood hazard area. I don't think the flood elevations extent, they might, and it's a really good question. I can take a look at that. If the SAFER project goes through, it's not just the it's not just the properties along the creek that are impacted. If it's those lines that extend all the way to Bolinas Avenue and parts of Shady Lane. So that's a valid question, and I'll take a look at it. I don't think that extends that far. I think the flooding on Shady Lane is more impacted by Ross Creek, but I'll take a look at that. That's a very good question. So, and I understand what you're saying. So we'll take a look at that, make sure that the SAFER project takes those properties into account as well. But just in closing, I believe the intent with the SAFER project was to reduce those water surface elevations outside of the creek channel. And that's why it's only the properties along the creek that are being impacted. What the SAFER project or the San Anselmo Flood Risk Reduction Project does is keep more water that used to go over bank, keeping it in the channel. So that water that used to go over bank was what used to flood Bolinas and Shady Lane, and those will actually, I believe, see a reduction in water surface elevation. But it's worth taking a look at, and I appreciate your comment.
Thank you very much. Let's bring it back to the council level. Are there any other discussion points or questions from council members? Council Member Cool.
Just to be clear on this, Rich, by maintaining the standards which are expressed in this ordinance as amended, we save our resident homeowners 10% on their flood insurance. Is that right?
Yeah, essentially, yes. We need this ordinance in order to give them their reduction in their flood insurance premiums.
Thank you.
Any other council member comments? Then Rich, this was a first reading and discussion. There's no action that's required to be taken tonight. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And does that mean that this comes back next month or in 2 months? When will we be seeing this again?
Yes, you'll come back next month, and I think you vote to introduce it, correct, Ben?
Correct.
You need to vote on it.
Yeah. You have a vote to approve the first reading to amend the municipal code.
Okay. Does that mean that there's a second vote in November to finally approve it?
In October.
October.
Oh, in October. Okay, fine. All right, thank you.
I
Then,
move to approve the second reading.
No, the first reading.
First reading,
First
sorry.
reading.
I will second that.
All right, let's take the vote. How do you vote, Councilmember Cool,
Aye.
Councilmember McMillan,
Aye.
and Mayor Robbins?
Aye,
The motion passes unanimously.
thank you. Item 12, town manager update and council discussion on town activities in response to COVID. It's another one of these times where it's things are uncertain. Town manager Chin.
Thank you. And I had in one of my meetings today, the Marin County Health Officer, well, the assistant officer was speaking and talking about the situation. And actually, this is relatively, and it's good news in the Marin County case. And she said, we have a lot of, obviously there's a lot of stories going on nationwide. In Marin, we really peaked the last days of July, first days of August. And since then, the COVID rates of infections have been decreasing pretty dramatically, and more so of a decrease than the rest of the state of California. And in fact, what she's saying, there's a new CDC guidelines and colors where Marin County would be the only county in the state of California that would be in the new CDC yellow color of moderate risk. So Marin's doing much better than the rest of the states, the bottom line. And the rates have gone down significantly. If you recall, they did at the early days of August, we passed Bay Area officers, health officers, including Marin, passed the indoor mask mandate. Marin's been highly vaccinated compared to the other counties and the rest of the state, and more people have continued to get vaccinated. They are seeing 100% of the cases what they diagnosed, what kind of strain, 100% of the COVID cases is the Delta virus right now in Marin in the past month, and different variations of the Delta virus as it's mutating. They did mention you have the new Mu variant. It's not present in Marin. It's started in Colombia. It's in like 39 countries. It appears that the Mu strain is more resistant, or the vaccinations are not too effective against that at this time. So that's one to keep an eye out on in the future. Last week, the public health, there was a Marin County public health order that mandated that all emergency personnel such as fire, paramedics, and police either had to be vaccinated or go through weekly testing. So that's now implemented. Well, the deadline of that's for some implementation September 15th. And the big major part of the idea is they don't want emergency responders who come into contact in hospitals and assisted nursing and skilled nursing to, obviously reduce the risk of COVID going into those places. Related back to our Marin Town Hall, we have the Cable Commission has installed the cameras in the chambers, but they still have some hookups to do that still work to get all the systems set up. But it will be in place to have, whenever it is, we come back in the chambers that, we can be videoing and proceeding with the videos and using the Zoom. So if there's any questions, and not that I can answer all of them, but to the degree I can answer COVID questions.
Are there any questions for Joe? Councilmember Cool.
Joe, I think last month I or somebody asked staff to determine what some other entities in the county are doing with respect to resuming public meetings. I know that I got a notice that MCCMC is going to have an outdoor in-person proceeding at the end of October. Do you have any information about whether anybody else is starting to open up?
I do know the neighboring jurisdictions have not, the ones along the valley. I can't say county-wide where everybody is. I'm having my next Marin manager meeting is going to be the end of September, and I'd get the update, but I'm not aware of, and there could be somebody out there meeting in person, but I'm not.
Our video,
Macmillan may have some response. I know neighboring jurisdictions, and Linda looks like.
so our video person that's setting us up in town hall, he works for all the other agencies. And we're all in the same boat. He said none of them are back and in person. And we're all kind of waiting to see what the governor says regarding returning to in-person meetings, or if he's going to extend the executive order. But we don't know, I don't know of any other agencies like ourselves that are back.
Okay.
Councilmember Macmillan has a comment.
Right. Julie?
Yeah, Beach, I think you meant the end of September MCC meeting, not October. And I think the email that I saw was kind of an exploratory, how would you feel being in person outside type thing. So I'm not sure that it's totally set yet. But I did read that the US Supreme Court is having in-person arguments by lawyers, and all 9 of them sitting in person. No public is allowed in, but the participants are there in person. Probably much lower vaccination rate in the DC area.
Interesting.
And it will be with when we do under the current Marin County health order, everybody will have to be, if we did meet in person, everybody would have to be wearing masks. So that's the order that was passed in early August. So,
We can't ask people when they come in, are you vaccinated? And if you're not, you can't come in. We can't do that, right?
That's an open question. Some
Ah.
cities are considering that, as long as we have an alternative like Zoom for people who are unvaccinated.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Right, that may be something that we'll be discussing next month under the COVID item. You know, if we want to have a policy about, as we get closer to reopening, do we want to have a policy about vaccinations? Any other comments about the COVID situation? And let's move on to item 13, council correspondence. Any council correspondence to share? I think that Noah Berry's email today, but I don't have anything else. Do either of you have anything? Okay, future council items? Any interest in adding something to the October agenda? Then the meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mayor. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
thank
Thank
you.
you.
Have a
Good
good
night.
evening, everyone.